Are pharmaceutical companies focus only on the profit-making diseases?
I think your observation is correct.
Deepak, do you think quality gets compromised to meet the deadlines and profits?
Where a few players.
How's your life in IIM Bangalore?
Life in IIM Bangalore was.
Whenever I hear IIM Bangalore, Three Idiot pops in my mind. Deepak, as a CEO, for me, profit and patient access both are important equally. And how do you balance this both?
I kind of disagree with the question.
At the level of a cost, so we are positioned better than China?
China continues to be more cost efficient.
Okay.
Even today.
Okay.
The lesson for us in India, a lot of people keep talking about China and China versus India, etc.
COVID-19 has been very unfortunate for all of us.
Yeah.
What did it teach the industry?
COVID was really a once in a century event.
What is the most expensive bill you have paid with a customer?
So I started getting nervous, and as it progressed, the dinner kept on happening, and eventually we landed up with a very, very, very significant bill. They didn't have anything vegan, so after all of this, when we left the restaurant, I was still very hungry.
Okay.
And I ended up French fries at McDonald's for $2.
Okay.
After that, after paying tens of thousands of dollars on the dinner, because I was very hungry. About some of the biggest challenges that healthcare is facing, and I think one of the biggest challenges is the inequity that you see in healthcare. The Indian pharma industry is very, very central to the future of pharma and to the future of healthcare.
Deepak, how is your company using science to reduce environmental footprints in the manufacturing practices?
I think this is a very, very important question.
Deepak, what is the most fascinating thing you felt in Indian Railways?
Most fascinating thing was the people.
People. I came across your book, The Boy Who Loved Trains. Very nicely, brilliantly put emotions in that. What has inspired you to write that book?
There is a very, very strong human angle.
Hi Deepak, I'm super excited to have a conversation with you today. The agenda here is we wanted to bring out the most inspiring stories that can bring a positive impact around us. And to start with, I would like to ask you, what is the story behind your journey from Indian Railways to IIM Bangalore and to the CEO of a pharma company?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me here. I think it's a pleasure, and I'm happy to contribute in whichever way your objectives of inspiring people go. So thank you for inviting me. So I come from a defense background. My father was working in the Ministry of Defense. So we used to live at multiple places all over India. We used to travel a lot by trains, and I was fascinated by trains. So incidentally, after completion of school, I got a chance to do my engineering and be associated with the Indian Railways. So it was almost like a childhood dream come true. Every little boy dreams of becoming a train driver, and you can go anywhere. And I think that was a dream come true. And when I did my engineering and worked in the railways, I think it was fascinating. I got a chance to interface with so many people. I got a chance to do things which would create impact on a lot of people. So I did that for a few years, after which I wanted to do further studies. So I went for my management studies at IIM Bangalore. And out there, it was a very different experience, learning of a very different kind, exposure to very different areas which I was not aware of. And post that, as part of the campus placement programs, I landed up in Dr.Reddys. It was probably the first, it was the first interview I took, and it landed up at Dr.Reddys. At that point of time, Dr.Reddys was just about beginning to get people from B schools and from the IIMs as part of the management trainee programs. So I remember Prasad, G.V. Prasad, the current co-chairman and managing director of Dr.Reddys himself, was a part of the interview panel. He came and we had a discussion, and in a few minutes, I think it was all done. So from there, I joined Dr.Reddys, and after joining Dr.Reddys, it's been 21 years. I joined in 2003, and I have been a part of multiple initiatives, handled various businesses, operated in different countries around the world, and it's been quite fascinating. So I think that's how the journey has progressed, and just want to keep going and make sure that whatever I do, wherever I do, I continue to create impact.
Right. Deepak, IRS is Indian Railway Services. It's a very prominent and it's a prestigious appointment. What is the defining moment that, okay, you felt now I have to go to my post graduation, or I would like to pursue my further education?
So I think the nature of the job was it was engineering, so it was involved with operations. I was a mechanical engineer, and I think it was fascinating. So day-to-day train operations was the core component of the job. But I think once you started to look at the bigger picture, I realized that there are also many parts which I did not have any awareness of. And I think the main reason for getting into an MBA was to build that holistic awareness and really get there. I didn't go with a very specific plan that I would join a pharma industry or I would go somewhere else. I think the idea was to go with the intent of learning, go with the intent of trying to understand things in a more holistic manner, and then take it as it comes.
Significant experiences you had during your job in railways?
Quite a few. And I think the fascinating part about trains in India is that almost everybody uses them.
Right.
Almost everybody is connected to them. So I think on the positive side, the work that you do is in a way measured every single day. If a train reaches its destination safely and on time, it means you've done your job well.
Right.
And many times there were situations when things were there were multiple challenges, yet you managed to get this outcome. And so every single day you get the satisfaction.
Right.
On the other hand, there are also times when things don't go as per plan, and that is where you realize that it's extremely important to work together with all the people around you.
Right.
And make sure that you're trying to address the situation in a manner that things get back on track.
Right.
So in a way, it epitomizes something that we should probably do in life itself. Things can go wrong, but how do you always try to focus on getting them back on track and moving forward through certain actions, through certain things that you can do. So the focus on doing, the bias for action, I think that was very, very fascinating.
Right. Deepak, what is the most fascinating thing you felt in Indian Railways?
Most fascinating thing was the people.
People.
So as part of, as a 21-year-old, when I got into my first role, I was in a unit where I had almost 900 people working under me as a 21-year-old. And you can imagine that this scale, while it is not anything unusual for, let's say, the government sector, it is it's a very large scale for those of us now in the private sector. So, somebody says, I have a big team, I have 5 people working under me. Here as a 21-year-old, not knowing anything, just out of engineering, you have suddenly a very large set of people to manage, 900 people or so. And the fascinating part about that is that you have something to learn from everyone. As long as you are in the right frame of interaction with them, as long as you are dealing with them with empathy, with respect, and in the spirit of a learner, that I might be at a certain place in the hierarchy, but I'm new to this setup. I have a lot to learn from you. And if you can teach me, I think that's when people just open up and embrace what you're trying to achieve. So the part about people was the most fascinating part for me in the Indian Railways.
How was your life in IIM Bangalore?
Life in IIM Bangalore was...
Whenever I hear IIM Bangalore, Three Idiot pops in my mind.
So IIM Bangalore is much more than Three Idiots. Three Idiots came much after I and so many others graduated from IIM Bangalore. I think it's a fabulous place because it gets together very, very smart, intelligent, competent people from all over India and also from many other parts of the world, and puts you in an environment where you are forced to constantly improve every single day. So I think that was a very, very fascinating part of it. There were also many challenges that people go through. I went through as well. There were certain subjects I was really very bad at, and I had to play out of my skin to clear those subjects. But the most important part was again the people.
Okay.
It's the people who are in your class, it's the people who are your seniors, the people who become your juniors. And I think it is the interactions with those people, most of them outside the classroom, that give you so much in terms of experience, in terms of learning, in terms of knowing something new, which is so fascinating that it still gives me goosebumps when I think of the various things that I learned when I interfaced with people.
Okay.
And I'm Bangalore, so it's again about the people. And as we go along in this conversation, probably this is one theme I will keep coming back again and again.
Sure.
That no matter where you are, whether you are in a government setup or in an academic setup or in any other setup, eventually it will boil down to the people.
Nice to hear that, Deepak. Then during your placement selections, I think you're saying that that's how you got selected to Dr.Reddys. Do you remember what kind of questions you got from GV Prasad, and any thoughts around that?
So I think the main question was, why do you want to join?
Okay.
And that was the main crux of the discussion.
Okay.
And at that point of time, just about a year and a half ago, Dr.Reddys had achieved a very significant milestone of becoming the first company from India to be successful in a paragraph 4 litigation in the US.
Okay.
And that's how Dr.Reddys managed to launch the generic version of Prozac, fluoxetine, and became the first Indian company to do so. That was also the time about a year ago when Dr.Reddys became the first company from Asia outside of Japan to be listed on the NYSE. So suddenly there was a company from India which started playing big on a global stage. And I mentioned some of those things because I'd done that little bit of a homework. And that is what I remember from that interaction.
What was your first role?
The first role was in a project called Pragati.
Okay.
That project was being run by an external consulting firm, one of the largest external consulting firms. And I was kind of coordinating from Dr.Reddys' side.
Okay.
So we ran that project in 3 waves. It was for cost reduction throughout the company.
Okay.
So in those 1.5 years, because costs are everywhere, I managed to get a very good flavor of the entire company, because we looked at every element of the cost across the board. So whether it was functions, businesses, geographies, and as a result of that, I was able to build my perspective about Dr.Reddys in a fairly holistic manner in a short span of time.
Nice, Deepak. Deepak, today if you look at it, you're one of the powerhouse in pharma industry, which can shape up the pharma world. Now, right from that period of time, as a junior consultant when you joined Dr.Reddys, from there to here, how does it feel so? And any thoughts around what kind of a journey you had so far?
So, I think over the past 21 years, the journey has been full of multiple experiences. So, I have done roles in, the first role, as I told you, was on a cost reduction project, largely supply chain focused. Then I've done roles in sales and marketing. I've done roles in portfolio and strategy, done roles in business development. I've led businesses. I've handled the COVID initiatives for Dr.Reddys.
Okay.
And so there's been a wide spectrum of things that I've got to do. And the most interesting thing is that because you get to do different things, you learn, you build your network, you understand, and you also fail and learn again.
Right.
So doing different things has been the most interesting part of it.
Right.
And it is this part that you get to do different things, which eventually create an impact on a patient, on a person who's trying to recover from illness and get back to health. I think that is the part which really resonates very deeply with me.
Okay.
That somewhere through my work, if I'm able to connect to someone's life and create a positive impact, I think that is very inspiring.
Nice.
And as long as that is happening, I feel extremely charged up about my work.
Amazing, Deepak. Usually because people try to shift companies after 2-3 years of time, but seeing that, you got to stick to the same company for such a long period of time, I think it's an amazing thing.
No, so you can call it same company, but because there have been so many roles, it's also about doing very different things and constantly being exposed to new things. So within the same setup, doing it is fascinating. So you don't have to really go through that establishing a credibility as a professional every time you shift to a new company. Here, that credibility is established. The organization is taking a bet on you, on making you entrusting you with something that you might not have done before, but because of what you bring to the table, the right intention, the right learning approach, the empathy, the organization takes a bet on you. So I think that is what has helped me to keep going.
Nice, Deepak. Deepak, recently I just came across your book, The Boy Who Loved Trains. Very nicely, brilliantly put emotions in that. What has inspired you to write that book?
So I think again it's about the human element. As we were talking earlier, the Indian Railways is the largest civilian organization in the world.
Okay.
And the scale is mammoth. So behind those trains and what a person would normally see, there is a very, very strong human angle. There are so many people who are working. There are so many people who are so deeply committed. There are so many people who are doing things which one cannot even imagine to ensure that trains run safely on time and take people safely and securely to their destinations. So I wanted to bring out that human element of the largest civilian organization in the world, and doing it from a personal perspective through the experiences that I had. That was the intention, and I think through the stories and through the characters in the book, a lot of it is about the human angle. So that is what I wanted to bring up.
Okay, nice, Deepak. Like, how did you get so much of time, Deepak, to come out with new articles, new blogs? And I see you keep on writing something or some other. Like, how do you manage your time?
So writing is mainly during travel. I travel a lot for my work.
Okay.
And travel a lot even otherwise. So during travel, whatever thought comes to mind, I just scribble it, sometimes on the phone notepad, or on the back of a boarding pass, or on a tissue paper, or on invoices. Those scribbles, then I try to put it together in a coherent manner, and usually, one plane journey is enough to write one article.
Right.
So, but it's about capturing the emotion of the moment, putting it in some form that it can be then taken forward, and not letting that moment pass. Because what you feel in the moment is probably the most genuine and authentic emotion.
Right.
Afterwards, one might try to rationalize, but feeling the moment and then conveying that moment through your words is what I attempt to do. And most of it is on travel. So,
right. Deepak, corporate world is like a race. Okay. So you coming from railways background to corporate, did you ever had a regret? Okay, probably I should get back to railways back. Did you ever felt this?
It is a race, but it's a race everywhere.
Okay.
So it's not that in a government sector or in an academic setting, you're not in a race. So I think what is more important is to keep your own balance, is to focus on yourself, that whatever I am doing as an individual, is it something that is meaningful for me? And is it something that is meaningful for the world? As long as the answer to these two questions is right, I think the distinction between this or that is probably less relevant.
Right. Deepak, you want to share something about your food habits?
Food habits?
What do you eat? How does your day look like?
So, this is
I heard you're a pure vegan. What's the story behind that?
Yeah, I'm vegan. I'm vegan, and I've been vegan for quite a few years now.
Okay.
So being vegan helps you stay energetic, bouncy, makes you feel light. I think that is something which carries you through the day. So I pretty much function at a reasonably good energy level throughout the day, and one of the things I attribute it to is my food preferences.
Okay.
In addition to that, I think being vegan is also about using a plant-based diet for other than health. It also has benefits in terms of being a more compassionate way to the way you manage your food habits. It's probably also kinder on the climate, it's kinder on the planet, and I think it it lends to a more sustainable way of life.
Okay.
So I feel very very good about being vegan.
Nice, Deepak. Deepak, like, generally I wanted to know what is that first thing you do in the morning from a work perspective?
From a work perspective, so from a work perspective, the first thing I do in the morning is again I call it my 1+1+1,
Okay.
which is the previous day,
Mhm.
this day, and the next day. So spend a few minutes just going through whatever happened on the previous day, and what might be the subsequent actions to be taken from what happened on the previous day.
Okay.
Then a little bit of time on the present. So who am I going to meet during this day? What am I going to do in this day? And how do you just mentally orient yourself to that day? And then a little bit of time on the next day. So tomorrow, what is in it for me tomorrow? So is there something that I have to do from a preparedness perspective today, or is there something that I need to connect with someone or speak to someone for what is going to come tomorrow? So I do this 1+1+1, and as a result of that, you're able to connect whatever you have done to whatever you are supposed to do today,
Okay.
to what's coming up the next day. And I'm extremely fortunate that I have a colleague who helps me out with this,
Okay.
and we kind of talk every day on this. And Sophie just helps me build my 1+1+1 routine.
Awesome. Awesome, Deepak. Deepak, what is that book which has influenced you very deeply?
Book that has influenced me deeply. I've read a lot of books, but I have to admit that what I enjoy reading the most are comics.
Okay.
So I read all kinds of comics, and so Tintin, Asterix, Amar Chitrakatha, Tinkle, Chacha Chaudhary, all kinds of comics, and I love them because they're light-hearted. They make you feel light and good, and many times they have humor in it, and it just gives you a nicer view on life. It also keeps the child in you alive. So so I actually really enjoy my comics. While I do read books, it's the comics which are my mojo.
Nice. Deepak. What is your favorite productivity hack?
The favorite productivity hack is probably mindfulness.
Okay.
And let me explain what I mean by that. It's about being in the moment and giving your 100% to that moment.
Okay.
So this moment I am with you, Goutham, and I'm trying to be 100% with you.
Okay.
And not get distracted anywhere. And if you are 100% in the moment, you probably end up being extremely productive about that moment.
Okay.
And it avoids rework, it avoids distractions, it avoids wavering around.
Right.
And so probably mindfulness is my best productivity hack.
How should we achieve that, Deepak? How did you master this kind of a skill?
I'm not a master by any stretch of imagination. I think nobody is, but it's a lot
It's a very difficult thing, to be in the present mind.
Yes.
I think
it's all about building a muscle. Just like you go to a gym
okay.
and you build a muscle, it's all about practicing it and building that muscle. I think no amount of theory can help you. It's about doing. And the most important thing about this is not to be bound by the happenings of the past, or be anxious about what might come about in the future.
Right.
If you are fully committed to this present moment, your output for this present moment is probably going to be at its peak. Yes. And it's a conscious effort. It's a journey, but I have a long way to go. However, that is what I'm consciously trying to do.
As I told you, one of the powerhouse in pharma industry. What do you think the next big thing is going to happen in pharma?
In pharma?
Yeah.
So what is happening is, let's look at pharma as a component of healthcare.
Right.
So maybe I start with healthcare and then I come down to pharma.
Maybe before that, you want to spend some time on the value chain. Maybe would you like to explain how these drugs are manufactured from discovery to the consumer?
Sure. I'm happy to explain that. So
in a very layman, any person on this planet should be able to understand. Okay, now I know how the drug is manufactured.
Okay. So let me start with the person who's consuming the drug, and let me start with her. Let's say somebody who's consuming a pill. So let's say you have fever. Typically, you would take paracetamol. Right. So let's say as a patient who has fever, I am consuming a pill of paracetamol. And let's try to work backwards from this. I'm the patient consuming this pill. I probably got this from a pharmacy, which was dispensing, which was selling this paracetamol. The pharmacy got it through a chain of distributors, wholesalers, etc. Eventually from a factory which manufactured paracetamol. That factory would typically be a factory where the formulation of paracetamol is made by combining various ingredients. Those ingredients have an active component and an inactive component. The active component is really that chemical which helps you address the condition that you have, and the inactive components are those which allow you to put it in a shape and form that it is palatable to a human being. Now, if you go back from that, how do you develop those things? It is usually chemistry. Chemistry is a series of reactions which eventually lead to a compound, and then that is manufactured at a large scale. Now, if you go backwards from that, how do you work out the chemistry? You work out the chemistry by looking at what could be the possible ways in which you could synthesize these molecules. Now, if you go back from there, you would start by saying that there is an unmet need. For that unmet need, there is something which needs to come into the body so that the body will interface with that compound and then create something. So that's how a drug is developed. Now, if I work the other way around, when you start conceptualizing that, let's say there is an unmet need, you start looking at what kind of compounds could possibly help address it. So you screen a large number of compounds. Within that, you arrive at what might possibly work and go through that process to finally arrive at a chemical structure. And then that chemical structure, after synthesis in a laboratory, you try to take it to a factory to make it at large scale, and then the chain goes forward.
Fascinating.
So in this process, I think it's important for me to mention that when you're trying to discover a new drug, the whole process can probably take anywhere from 10 to 12 years, sometimes even more. And a completely new development would also cost a lot of money. It would probably cost anywhere around $2 billion today, which is close to 16,000 crore rupees. And given that it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money, it is also a process which is fraught with risks. So when you start, the probability of success is probably 1 in 10,000. As you move along that process through those 10 years, the probability of success increases. And and that is how eventually drugs land up in the hands of a patient who would then take it and have it do what it was intended to do.
Nice, Deepak. So what's the next big thing in this medicine?
So now coming to what's the next big thing in this medicine. So the one shift that all of us are seeing in our life all around us is technology. At the same time, there is also a lot of data coming in. Huge amount of data is getting generated by each individual, and huge amount of data is also now available for us to fast track some of these processes. So for example, you have a database of thousands, maybe millions of chemical reactions. So you can actually do the drug synthesis much faster than what it would be by running those experiments in a laboratory. Rather, you can simulate them on a computer and you can get to that outcome much faster. So that's the other thing which I see would be pretty significant. Then I also see constant availability of devices on people. So you're wearing a watch, which I believe is capturing a lot of your parameters. So individual level health parameters monitoring
Okay.
can lead to better predictive outcomes
Mhm.
for what might happen in the future. So if you're
Okay.
able to connect these and look at data of millions of people, you could see that this trigger can eventually lead to this outcome. And the ability to connect that data in a meaningful way can help us develop more preventive medicine, can help us predict who is likely to be more vulnerable, who is likely to be at greater risk.
Right.
And so I think this is where, at a very high level, this is where it's probably going. And in a few years, we will have a lot more of this in our life. The other thing on the future, typically, drugs as we know them have been about chemistry.
Okay.
So there are chemical compounds put in a certain way, just like the paracetamol example I explained. Now the intersection of chemistry and biology is becoming a lot more. So
Okay.
many drugs are now biological drugs. A lot many of those are coming in from live organisms, and in many places chemistry and biology are interfacing with each other.
Okay.
So that's something which will happen more and more
Right.
as we go ahead. However, all that is while all that is happening, I think it's very important for us to be conscious and humble about some of the biggest challenges that healthcare is facing. And I think one of the biggest challenges is the inequity that you see in healthcare.
Okay.
The availability and accessibility of health
Mhm.
to people around the world and even people in India is very different.
Okay.
The kind of healthcare that you and I can probably get is very different from what many of other people in India and in the rest of the world can get.
Absolutely. Yes.
It depends on a host of factors, and I think this inequity is very large. How do you bridge this inequity? How do you get to a common minimum standard which offers quality healthcare, affordable prices, so that this, which is something so fundamental to human life, can be made available and accessible to everyone, is achieved? I think that is the big challenge which continues to remain,
Okay.
and where I think technology can play a big role in bridging that gap which exists today.
Well said, Deepak. And for this future of medicine, how is your company or in general the Indian pharma industry is getting prepared?
So I think the Indian pharma industry is very, very central to the future of pharma and to the future of healthcare. India is today still the pharma capital of the world, because a lot of the drugs, whether it is for low and middle income countries, or even for countries like the United States, countries in Europe, are getting manufactured from India.
Okay.
The generic part of it, generic drugs are getting manufactured in India. Almost 80 to 90% of the essential medicines in the world are getting made in India.
Okay.
A huge amount of vaccines which are required for the world are getting made in India. So in that sense, Indian pharma has its contribution in a very significant way even today. The next step is to become more innovative.
What has boosted that? What has helped India to propel in that direction?
Okay. So I think it's been a journey for the last 30, 40 years. It started off in the 70s when India chose to indigenize the pharma industry in a big way. A lot of companies came up, and because of that, India, with its talent pool, with its skills in chemistry, and with its ability to operate at efficient costs, managed to become the generic and the bulk drug capital of the world.
Okay.
And as a result of that, India-made medicines are now everywhere, and they are most commonly used. Okay. And that has been one of the big things for India. The scale, now it's at scale, a lot of these things, and that is why India has moved in the last 3 to 4 decades from being a very fringe player to becoming a major player in the generic and the vaccine world.
Okay.
In the future, I think this has to move from the generic to innovation. That's one big thing, and a lot of Indian companies, including Dr.Reddys, are trying to do that. It's also about working on the intersection of chemistry and biology. I think that is something which Dr. Reddy's is trying to do. It's also about bringing in a more holistic view of health and not just staying limited to medicine. Comes up in a big way.
Okay.
And so Dr. Reddy's is also making efforts in that direction. And how do you kind of look at health more holistically with consumer health becoming an area of focus. More and more people around the world are more aware, and therefore they are trying to take charge of their own health, not just in terms of medicine, but also food and the intersection of nutrition and medicine. And that is that is what we are also trying to do as a company. So the intersection of biology and chemistry, more biology, consumer health, food and nutrition. These are some of the areas where we are trying to move forward so that we can be of relevance to patients in the world, not just for illness, but also for prevention, but also for wellness.
Right. So is my understanding correct that at the level of a cost, so we are positioned better than China?
So I think China continues to be more cost efficient.
Okay.
Even today. And China has had, I think they've done very well in the last 3 decades by creating the industry at scale, especially the API. On the API side, they have had a lot of government plus private sector coming together to create large scale, efficient API industry.
Okay.
The other thing which China is doing very well now in the last few years is that it has leapfrogged many steps on the innovation side as well. So a lot of innovation now is also beginning to be done in China.
Okay.
And this innovation is both around new chemical entities, around new biological entities, and it's just fascinating how they have kind of covered the whole value chain.
Okay.
The lesson for us in India is that obviously you have to have both generic and innovation. You have to focus on innovation as well. And the other lesson for us is that how can you create a more collaborative structure, whether it's China, whether it's United States, whether it's anyone else, or what we are doing in India, within the various stakeholders in India to create better interventions for good health. Okay. And so, a lot of people keep talking about China and China versus India, etc. I think the goal has to be to look at the best way in which you can collaborate with all the stakeholders and all the know-how that is available in the world, so that eventually you're able to create interventions that make a difference to the patient.
Okay. Deepak, what's that one myth about the pharmaceutical industry that you want to bust?
So, I think there are quite a few myths about the pharmaceutical industry. This industry doesn't have a very good reputation, but I want to bust a few of those myths. So, myth number 1, pharmaceutical industry is only interested in profiteering.
Okay.
I think it's a myth. While they are commercial enterprises, but it is not the only driver. A lot of pharma companies are also interested and very deeply passionate about making a difference to the life of patients.
Okay.
So I think that is one myth I want to bust. The other, which is probably relevant in the context of what we do in India and the Indian pharma industry, is that generic drugs, the myth is that generic drugs are not as good as innovative drugs.
Okay.
I think the generic drugs come with a lot of rigor, a lot of scientific testing and development, and eventually the goal of a generic drug is to do exactly the same thing as an innovative drug. So these are probably 2 myths I want to bust.
Deepak, how do you keep your team so motivated at a very high stake situations?
So I think in these kind of situations, especially when you have large teams and a context, the most important thing is to walk the talk and to lead by example.
Okay.
No amount of speech, no amount of big words can have an impact as much as a little bit of doing by yourself and leading by example. So I guess
Okay.
probably the most important thing is to lead by example, walk the talk. And in that, I think it's also important to stay extremely optimistic about the future.
Okay.
And that no matter what the situation, you will be able to either overcome it or make it better, because that optimism is contagious. And I feel everybody is very keen to do good work. Everybody is very keen to succeed. Everybody is very keen to make a difference. As long as you can tap that optimism, tap that inherent willingness to do good, it can make a lot of difference to your team.
Right, Deepak. What's the most important leadership principle that you really believe to the heart?
So I will repeat my answer to the previous question. It is about walking the talk. It's
Okay.
about leading by example. But probably one more principle which can stand you in extremely good stead is empathy.
Okay.
Empathy for yourself, empathy for the people around you, empathy for the people who you're supposed to serve with whatever products and services you're making. Once you bring in the dimension of empathy, you will be able to generate a much, much better understanding of the needs, and you will be able to create actions that address those needs.
Okay.
So probably empathy, empathy would be that one thing in addition to walking the talk and leading by example.
Right.
And if you're empathetic, it naturally leads to a lot of respect for the other. It leads to a human connection, which has potential far more than what any process can bring in.
Right.
So,
how do you handle failure, Deepak?
So, there have been many things which I have attempted to do, which have failed.
Okay.
Some have failed slightly, some have failed spectacularly.
Okay.
I think the starting point is to acknowledge the failure. The acknowledgement of the failure moves you from a space of denial to a space of acceptance.
Okay.
And through that acceptance, you are able to then reflect what is it that was needed to bring about a different outcome.
Okay.
What is it that could have possibly been done differently? And as a result of that, get back to attempting it with a new plan. I think that acknowledgement, reflection leading to a new set of actions, that is probably the cycle of handling failure for me. It works sometimes, it does not work sometimes, but I still feel that the most important thing from a failure is to learn and derive the next set of actions which you can possibly take, because life is all about living forward.
Right.
You cannot live in the past. So you have to acknowledge what's gone wrong, but you have to be equally committed to action in the next moment.
Great, Deepak. Deepak, any thoughts around taking tough decisions at the peak moments?
So I think these kind of decisions come very often at different points of time. And it's also a muscle. Okay. I think it's a muscle which is, again, something I am in the process of building. It's a WIP. I think it's WIP for everyone, but at different stages. It's a WIP for me. But there have been numerous instances, and I want to just go back to the time of the COVID pandemic, when all of us were in the healthcare industry were under a lot of pressure, and there were expectations all around, and there were multiple stakeholder challenges. We had to take a lot of tough calls at that point of time, including trade-offs. So I think whenever you make a trade-off, do it in the interest of the eventual beneficiary who's supposed to benefit from your products or services, in this case the patient. As long as you make those trade-offs in favor of that, it's probably the right thing to do. So too many to account, but I would say tough decisions are a natural part of life for any person in in the corporate world and even otherwise. But make them again with empathy and make them with the interest of the eventual stakeholder in mind. And even if you have to take something that's really not good. Let's say there are some roles which have become redundant and you want to communicate that to someone. Even there, by bringing in the element of empathy, being very transparent about the situation, being very clear about what has led to this decision being taken, can create much better acceptance and maybe a path forward for the individual in question. So it's not the decision alone. It's also about how you connect that decision to your subsequent actions.
Right. How many times do you travel in a year?
How many times I travel in a year? I travel a lot. I travel almost 50% of the time.
Okay.
It's both domestic as well as international. So domestic maybe 4 or 5 trips a month, so maybe 50-60 times a year. International maybe 2-3 trips a month, so 20-30 times a year. So yeah.
Okay. So when you go for customer meetings and all that, so say that you're done with a customer meeting in the morning or in the evening, then after that, how do you spend? Like, for example, say you went to Switzerland or anywhere. So do you travel? Do you go to places? Like how does the evenings look like to you?
There are 2 things I do. I walk a lot.
Okay.
So after customer meetings, walking is the best way to know a place.
Okay.
I walk a lot, and I also try to interact with locals who are not connected to my work. So there are several internet-based, websites like Hospitality Club, which I'm one of the earliest members of, where you can interface with people from another part of the world, just meet them and have an exchange on life about a certain place. So I do a lot of that.
Okay.
And yes, I walk a lot. So all my steps get compensated for, which I cannot do as much in India, get compensated for when I'm traveling. And because travel is a lot, I kind of keep my steps.
Nice. What is the most expensive bill you have paid with a customer?
Expensive bill with a customer. So
any events you want to share?
Yeah. I do want to share, and maybe it is also a good learning for anyone who wants to hear. So this was very long ago. I think 15-16 years ago. I was with a very important customer in Brazil.
Okay.
And we invited them for a dinner, and we invited 3 people. 13 people landed up.
Okay.
I don't know whether there was a gap in communication or something, but 13 people landed up, and when they landed up, before they landed up, they said we would like to have dinner at this restaurant.
Okay.
And without checking, I kind of said fine. And it turned out to be a Michelin star restaurant, which was really a very, very expensive restaurant. But that's, not the entire story. Once they landed up, the 13 people, each of them started ordering individual wine bottles. Okay. And then there were, a handful of us, 3 of us from our side. So I started getting nervous. And, as it progressed, the dinner kept on happening, and eventually we landed up with a very, very, very significant bill, which was way beyond any credit card limits that I had.
Okay.
So we had to use multiple cards simply to clear the bill.
Okay.
And the lesson for me was that when you're doing such a thing, do a little bit of your homework. Just be very clear on how many people are coming and which place you're coming to, and do a little bit of that let's say homework beforehand, and make sure you are conscious about what's going to happen. And the funny part really is it was a bill which came close to, I think, tens of thousands of dollars, one bill. And because it was a fancy restaurant, because I'm vegan, they didn't have anything vegan. So after all of this, when we left the restaurant, I was still very hungry.
Okay.
And I ended up with French fries at McDonald's for $2.
Okay.
After that, after paying tens of thousands of dollars on the dinner,
Okay.
because I was very hungry, and
Nice.
So that is really funny. And the lesson was be always very clear about what who you're inviting, how many you're inviting, where you're inviting.
Deepak, how do you explain to someone about your job in a random dinner party without using buzzwords?
Introduce my work to them?
Yes, without using any. How do you introduce yourself?
Okay, to a general audience, not
yes.
to a pharma audience.
Yes.
Okay. That's a good question. So I would probably say I would start with the individual saying, I'm sure you or someone you know is consuming medicines.
Okay.
So I work in a manner, I work to make those medicines and to have them available to people wherever they need them.
Okay.
So that it helps them get to good health. I hope it is simple enough. If I have to add one more line, I would probably say I also see that the medicine requirements which are existing and the potential medicine requirements of the future, I'm able to make it available to you.
Right.
I do it by working together with a very large number of people who are experts in their respective areas.
Right. What is the one skill that you wish for?
That one skill. So let me talk about one skill which is not related to all this corporate stuff, but one thing I really wish I could, which is to sing. I am probably the worst singer in the world.
Okay.
And also the worst dancer in the world. So it's probably something I wish I could do better. But let me also tell you one more thing. Many times in formal settings, etc., you have to have you have to be formally coat and tie and everything. So I don't know how to tie the knot of a tie. So I always get it done from my father, and I just keep it like that, and I just wear it on top. So it's one small skill which I know if I put my mind to it, I'll probably be able to do it. But it's good to live with that imperfection.
Right. Deepak, what's your favorite drug and why?
Favorite drug?
Yes.
You mean medicine?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I will probably talk of maybe 2 or 3. And that is because I think these medicines changed the course of history and changed the course of mankind. The first one would probably be the antibiotics, let's say penicillin. Before Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin and the effect it can have on infections, the world used to be a very difficult place for anybody who was suffering from bacterial infections or any other kind of infection. The discovery of penicillin changed the history of the world. And I guess, I think that has been one of the singular achievements of medicine in the past 100 odd years. In addition to penicillin, I also think 2 more drugs have been extremely important. One is insulin, which completely altered the way a person with diabetes could look at life and could look at leading a healthy, meaningful, and a long life. And third, I feel probably aspirin, which all of us know, all of us use for the kind of impact it has had over more than 150 years on the history of the world. So I would hold these 3 drugs in very, very high esteem.
Deepak, how is your company using science to reduce environmental footprints in the manufacturing practices?
Okay. I think this is a very, very important question because the implication of this goes far beyond just manufacturing in a factory. The implication of this is also about the impact on the environment, the impact on the communities that live around us. So I'm very happy to share that Dr. Reddy's has been far ahead of the curve as far as sustainable manufacturing practices are concerned. There has been a lot of effort around green chemistry.
Okay.
There has been a lot of effort around zero discharge, whether it's zero liquid discharge, zero solid discharge. There has been a lot of recycling, and there has been a huge amount of commitment to renewable energy. So if you look at all of these together, it's about creating a more sustainable operations, which helps you to minimize your impact on the environment and net become not just carbon neutral, but at one stage even carbon positive, so that you are impacting the environment in a positive way through the work that you do.
Right. Deepak, I want to be very honest.
Yeah.
Are pharmaceutical companies focus only on the profit-making diseases?
So, I think your observation is correct. It is correct because a pharmaceutical company would typically look at those disease areas where there is the prevalence of a large patient pool, where a lot of people could be potentially in need of that medicine.
Okay.
And therefore, you're able to make more and sell more. I think that is how most companies have been viewing, the investments that they do on research as far as disease areas are concerned. So that is why if you look at it in disease areas like cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, obesity, cancer, these are disease areas which have a lot of prevalence, which a lot more people are suffering from because of the changes that we are seeing in the world around us on account of demographics, lifestyle, stress. And therefore, there is a large patient pool that is available. So I think that has been the typical thought process for a lot of companies.
Okay.
At the same time, it's also important for me to mention, to provide a balanced view to your question, that there are a lot of diseases which are areas of public health concern. There are a lot of rare diseases. There are a lot of orphan indications which are in need of drugs. So some companies are consciously working on those. Some companies are also looking at that angle, that how do we address some of these disease areas which also impact people.
Right.
And it's it's also happening, but the first part which you said is much more. So certain disease areas is much more. So that is probably my take on this. In terms of what implications can it have, for sure the disease areas like cardiovascular, CNS, diabetes do deserve a lot of attention because of what is happening. But I think it's also important from the aspect of equity in healthcare, from the aspect of making all kinds of medicines available, affordable and accessible to people around the world, that we also look at some of these other areas. So whether it's infectious diseases, whether it is orphan indications, whether it's neglected diseases, all of these are also important. And this is where partnerships and collaborations between pharma companies, between governments, between agencies who are working on this on these areas, and other regional and local players where the prevalence of these diseases probably creates a lot of impact locally. I think those partnerships and collaborations are extremely important to make sure that these disease areas are also addressed in a meaningful way.
Right, Deepak. Deepak, what drives cost strategies?
So I think it's a multi-dimensional thing, which is a combination of a few factors. I will try to share some of them. One of them is obviously how many consumers of this drug are there, how big is the patient pool, and how many people are likely to be on that drug. So that is the numbers, the number of patients. The second is the cost it took to develop the drug. As we were talking about earlier, there is a lot of cost that goes into the development of a drug, and it's a long process. expensive process and a risky process, the standpoint of recovering those costs. So that is the second part. Right? The third part is around the whole operations, the supply chain. Where are the materials coming from? What are the costs? Where are you making it? Is it in an expensive location? Is it in a relatively cheap location, and so on? The third part is that. And I think the fourth part is what are the alternatives available for this drug?
Okay.
So if you are talking of a new drug, what kind of alternatives are available, and is this drug from a pharmacoeconomic perspective likely to give you as much benefit as the alternative that is available? How do they stack up? So that is probably the fourth angle. And the most important, which plays out a lot in the generic world, is the extent and degree of competition.
Okay.
So how many competitors are there? If you have less competitors, probably pricing is different. If you have many competitors, then pricing operates differently. So it's a multi-dimensional thing, but a combination of these 4 or 5 factors.
Okay. Deepak, I think if you look at in India landscape now, these CDMOs are kind of trending now.
So first, I think it's important for us to know that outsourcing as a trend is a huge trend.
Okay.
More and more outsourcing is happening in pharmaceuticals than ever before.
Okay.
Whether it is from the standpoint of early stage drug discovery, or as a CDMO,
right,
or large scale manufacturing,
right,
outsourcing is happening like never before.
okay.
So it's increasing across the world. So it's a trend which will only keep on increasing. The reason for this is people want to focus on what their core capabilities are, and then look at partners who can do it for them better, faster, and cheaper.
Okay.
That is what is happening. Now, as a trend, that's great. However, what is very important is to balance this with the right kind of a CDMO partner, the right kind of a partner who can help you with this outsourcing so that the quality is maintained, the standards and the compliance is maintained, and your intellectual property is safe. I think nobody, these are non-negotiables.
Right, absolutely.
And if these non-negotiables are taken care of, then outsourcing has its benefits. But it's very important to be working with the right kind of a partner where the non-negotiables are addressed, both in terms of quality, service, reliability, intellectual property, etc. And it is giving you the benefits that outsourcing is supposed to bring in the first place.
Deepak, do you think quality gets compromised to meet the deadlines and profits?
If I have to answer in one word, for the majority of this industry, the answer is no. It does not. But we have seen instances where some of these incidents have happened. There were 1 or 2 very sad incidents recently, I think a couple of years ago, when some cough syrup which was exported from India for children resulted in the death of 66 children. So in Africa, there have been these kind of instances where a few players who are not following the right procedures, not following the right standards, end up with these kind of outcomes, which paints the entire industry in a bad light, and paints it with one kind of a brush. So that is extremely unfortunate. And I think for anybody in this industry, if you ask any person who is a committed, serious player in this industry, quality is over and above everything else. Quality comes before profits. Quality comes before market share. Quality comes before any other commercial consideration. Because if the original purpose for which you're developing a drug is not met because of poor quality, then you're completely failing in your duty as a responsible player in this industry. So I think for most of the players, quality does come first, but we've had these unfortunate incidents which definitely need to be addressed.
Right.
And stronger regulations, stronger controls, more compliance practices need to be brought in to make sure that we take these kind of incidents, which are one-offs, to zero.
And Deepak, COVID-19 has been very unfortunate for all of us.
Yeah.
What did it teach the industry?
So, COVID was really a once in a century event. The other big global pandemic the world had faced was in 1918 when we had the Spanish flu, which was prevalent all over, and so this was 100 years after the earlier 1918 Spanish flu outbreak, and it was an inflection point for the world, an inflection point for the healthcare sector, an inflection point for the pharmaceutical sector, and it all of us experienced it in some way or the other. It brought about a lot of lessons both at the individual level and at the organization level. I think at the organization level, one of the big lessons was that you can learn to operate in extremely constrained situations innovatively and collaboratively,
Okay.
so that you can do things much faster than what you had imagined. For
Okay.
example, a drug can be brought to the market from the time of conceptualization in a matter of months, what takes 10 to 12 years,
Right,
which I
yes.
mentioned to you earlier. A vaccine can probably come to patients in a matter of less than a year, what would otherwise take maybe 15 years.
Right.
Now, obviously, these come with trade-offs as well. People have been saying that they were not fully tested. Some people are saying,
Right.
long-term outcomes. But at that point of time, I think the remarkable thing for me was that a lot of people in the world came together
Right.
to do something which was not done before. So to develop a drug in months, what used to take years, to do specific things in days and weeks, what was taking years. Those are kind of things which were remarkable lessons.
Right.
The other part of this is also, what did we do from these lessons for our life today, now that COVID is behind us. I think it's extremely important to keep those lessons alive, and I see we are beginning to forget those lessons. So that what happens if something like this happens the next time?
Right.
How will our response be different? How will our state of preparedness be different?
Right.
And how will we be able to get less people die or less people negatively impacted
Right.
because of better preparedness? I think those are the lessons which we have to keep in mind,
Right.
and do it essentially by a lot of different stakeholders working together in a much more collaborative manner, just like they did in those 2 years from 2020 to 2022.
Right. Right, Deepak. Deepak, as a CEO, for me, profit and patient access both are important equally. And how do you balance this both?
So I kind of disagree with the question.
Okay.
Because patients and success from a commercial sense are not independent of each other.
Okay.
If you are able to bring about the right set of drugs with good quality, addressing the needs of a large number of patients, the commercial outcomes will automatically follow. There's a very famous quote by George Merck, who was the founder of Merck, who's one of the which is one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, that medicine is for the people, it's not for the profits. The more we have remembered that medicine is for the people, the profits will automatically follow.
Okay.
The stronger you remember that it's for the people, the better they will be. But
Right.
focus on the people, because eventually you're doing this because it's meant for somebody to come out of illness or to get into a state of better health.
Right.
As long as you're remembering that, the rest of the things will follow. But if
Right.
you're focused on profit only and not on the patient, chances are you will take shortcuts, you will take wrong decisions, you might compromise quality, and that will be a disaster. It might get you a short-term profit in some isolated places, but it will never be sustainable for the long term. So for me, it's not a trade-off. By serving the patient, you will meet all your outcomes. If you're not serving the patient, you will not meet your outcomes.
Right.
And sorry to be very passionate about it, but I feel very
Absolutely.
strongly about this, because if you forget that this work you're doing is for a patient, then you are not prioritizing it in the right way.
Well said, Deepak. Well said.
Mm.
Deepak, imagine, say, you have a blank check, okay, and you are authorized to write any number of amount. And what is the next big groundbreaking initiative you would start for Dr. Reddy's?
Okay, I would probably look at a universal vaccine
Okay.
which can aid in preventing the outbreak of a large number of diseases
Okay.
caused by various organisms. So, to develop a universal vaccine which can prevent illnesses from coming in would probably be my utopian answer to your question. I don't know if such a thing is even feasible, but it should not stop us from dreaming. And to develop that universal vaccine every person in the world can take, so that the focus is more on prevention, the focus is more on early addressal, uh, uh, so that illness is reduced, people continue to stay in good health. That would be my unconstrained vision on this.
Deepak, pharmaceutical services and active ingredients is a core and fundamental base for Dr. Reddy's. And heading that business, what's your vision for that?
So the vision for this is to be the number one business of this kind in the world.
Okay.
And by that, I mean a B2B business, which is working very closely with other pharmaceutical companies, other partners in the healthcare space, multilateral agencies, and making them successful. So this is a pure B2B business. This business is successful if your collaborators are successful, if your customers are successful. And my vision is to make this the number one business of its kind in the world through a combination of 2 or 3 different business models, which are then played across different parts of the world, but creating an impact globally.
Right, Deepak. Deepak, what are those critical values you look in a team building?
In team building, so the most important part of team building is trust. I think if you can trust every person in your team and trust them with your life, that creates magic. That creates outcomes which you have not even thought of. So, so I operate from a space of almost blind trust in my team and taking it on face value. So, so if somebody is saying it, I will not read between the lines. I will take it on face value in the spirit of 100% trust. And most of the times it works well. Sometimes it also doesn't work. Sometimes, there might be situations when somebody could take advantage of you, but those are few and far in between. Overwhelmingly, I think it still keeps my belief in trust and almost blind trust in the team alive, so that if I trust you and you trust me and we are a part of the same team, we can do a lot of things together. Absolutely. Which is more than what we could individually do. Much, much more than what we could individually do.
Absolutely. Amazing, Deepak. Deepak, looking at the API market, such a highly competitive landscape it has, how do you think you can make a difference? How do you think you can differentiate yourself from other competitors?
Yeah. So, I think this API business, and for those who don't know what an API stands for, API is active pharmaceutical ingredient. Right. Which is the active ingredient that goes inside a medicine. That is the one which has the curative effect or the preventive effect. And this business now has thousands of players around the world. So your question is a very valid question, that how do you differentiate in a market where so many people are there, and eventually it's a product which is defined by chemistry.
Right.
So, so what you can do is that, of course, there are certain hygiene factors. The product has to be of excellent quality. You have to make your customer successful in terms of their expectations of timelines and costs. So you have to meet the baseline hygiene.
Right.
But a lot of people could
As per
meet the baseline hygiene.
Regulatory norms, this is
You have to meet.
quality.
Yes. Beyond the
That
baseline
is
hygiene.
default.
Yes, that's default.
Mhm.
Beyond the baseline hygiene, what can you do? I think it's a lot about seeing how you can be a part of the solution to your customer.
Okay.
And you being as a part of the solution to your customer could mean you're doing something more than just that, just that molecule, just that
Okay.
compound. It could mean that you're doing something different to adjust to their requirements so that they can be successful in the market.
Okay.
It could mean that you are running your systems and processes in a manner that is extremely sustainable, good for the environment, which fits in with the objectives of your customers and their goals. It could mean that you are creating alternate business models for your customers so that they can be successful. It could mean you are helping them utilize their capacities better. So
Right.
you could wrap around that API molecule with a lot of these add-ons, which create a difference, which actually moves the whole equation from being a buyer-seller equation to an equation of being a very strong strategic collaborator with whom you can partner across multiple dimensions. I think that is probably the biggest unlock and the biggest differentiator in this business.
Right. And Deepak, in a manufacturing point of view, so we have a front end team, we have a back end team.
Yeah.
The front end is BD, business development, and the back end you have manufacturing, maybe you have R&D, etc. So on. I think that collaboration is very much important. It has to be as smooth as butter, so that the customer is happy, who is sitting some at other part of the globe. So as a CEO, what's your take on this? How do you manage?
Sure. So I think the starting point of this is to remember the reason you're doing all this. You're doing all this so that somebody somewhere in the world will consume a medicine which will help him get to good health.
Right.
And that somebody is consuming a medicine which is made by what you make.
Right.
So as long as you keep the requirements of the end user,
right,
and your customer absolutely in the center and core of what you do, and as long as that is clearly understood, the connection between the patient, the customer, and each of the entities,
right,
whether it's a sales entity, a marketing entity, a manufacturing entity, a R&D entity, supply chain entity, doesn't matter.
Right.
Wherever you are, the understanding that my work connects to the outcome at the level of a patient, and that patient could be you yourself, could be your child, it could be your mother, it could be your sister, it could be anyone.
Right.
As long as that is made clear, people will begin to orient their actions in the right way. So the starting point is this. Starting point is to remember who and what you're doing it for. The other thing, once you remember that, is to make sure that there is a very clear, common, and consistent understanding of the specifics of what is needed to be done, so that the end patient can get the right outcomes. And that will then translate into very specific goals for the organization. And those have to be then adhered to by every person in the chain. No matter what you are, no matter whether you're doing R&D, whether you're doing manufacturing, whether you're doing selling, doesn't matter. Those set of common minimum goals have to be then adhered to. And obviously within, after that, at the next level, you would have various things which relate to functional expertise. So that is the second thing. First, remembering who it is for. Second, creating that common minimum set of goals.
Right.
Third is probably to make sure that your communication across the teams is seamless, so that there is an understanding and appreciation of not just the positives but also the challenges that each person in the chain is facing.
Right.
And therefore, how do you make sure that they are transparently addressed in the spirit of collaboration, in the spirit of problem solving, to address some of those issues. And I think if you start from the fundamentals and go in this manner, it lends to a lot more credible teamwork, leading to better outcomes for the patient. And that is probably the way to get cross-functional collaboration in a manner that it works for the patient.
Right. This question regards to the work-life balance.
Mm.
See, as a CEO, under you, the people wanted to take the heavy targets. Okay. But the actual people who work at the ground, they feel a lot of overburden, maybe because of due to some unrealistic targets. What do you think that can be done to streamline this kind of activity?
So I think your question is a very important question which plays out in a corporate context very frequently. I have a few points to share on this. One is in terms of aspirations. Always aim very, very high.
Okay.
It's good to aim very high and put your best efforts towards it and reach somewhere. It's much better than aiming very low and then say, I have achieved.
Okay.
Okay. You would still probably end up higher if you have aimed for the stars. You'll probably reach the moon.
Okay.
Than you're saying I'm aiming for ground floor and say I've reached first floor.
Okay.
So so you would the moon is still higher than the first floor.
Right.
And so first of all, aspiration is about your understanding and connect towards the eventual objective of your business. What do you want to do? So never be shy of aspiration.
Okay.
That is number one. And I think this is the more it gets communicated, it's not about just one person, it's about everybody aspiring to do more and to create more impact. The second thing is the fear of failure. Many times people take low targets, low goals because they're afraid to fail.
Beautiful.
So how can you eliminate the fear of failure?
Okay.
So that a person is not shy to be aspirational.
Okay.
And I think the moment you eliminate that fear, there is a huge amount of unlock which can happen in every human being.
Right.
And every human being is, again, in my view, has unlimited scope to do things.
Right.
And many times the biggest constraint is either in the mind or in a fear or there's a fear or there's a block.
Yes.
So how do you unlock that? And essentially the biggest unlock is eliminating the fear of failure.
Okay.
So communicate to the team, go for it, try, give it your best shot, and have a plan to it, work on it. Even if you don't make it, because you are operating on a very high level of aspiration than a low aspiration which you will make, you will only benefit from it by learning, and you will not be penalized. So elimination of that failure, that fear of failure. The third is to eliminate waste. In any job that you do in the corporate world, there is a scope to eliminate waste. Waste means those activities which are not creating a positive impact on the eventual patient or on the eventual customers. So if you're filling up some form which is not going to make a difference to the customer or to your ability to function as a good professional organization, it is probably not needed.
Right.
If there is a decision which requires 8 people to sign in, of which only 2 are adding some value, then the other 6 are not needed.
Right.
So elimination of waste can also create an unlock which can free up time, which can free up capacity. So if somebody was filing 40 dossiers, can probably file 120 by eliminating waste.
Right.
So it's a combination of all of these factors that we've spoken about. Even after all this, you would still need to support your team with certain things which have not been done before, which means the right kind of training, the right kind of capability enhancement, the right kind of skill sets, because there would be things which people need to be trained on. And that is the job of the person who's heading that team or heading that organization, to make sure that from a capability perspective, you are consciously building that capability for your team.
Nice.
And if you put these things together, keep the patient in mind, eliminate the fear of failure, cut out waste, build the right kind of capabilities, I'm sure every team, every individual can get to a place much, much higher than where they are today.
Amazing.
And create much more impact. So,
Nice.
Long answer to
Well
your
said.
short question.
Deepak, what is it one piece of advice you would give to aspiring CEOs and entrepreneurs?
Be adaptable. That would be the advice. I can elaborate on that. The world around us is changing so much that what was true yesterday might not be true today. The rules of the game yesterday might not be the rules of the game of tomorrow, and therefore you have to be extremely adaptable.
Okay.
uh, to uh, to the changing world around us. So building the muscle of adaptability, uh, being comfortable with unknowns,
Right.
being comfortable with ambiguity, being comfortable with uncertainty is extremely important, because there will not be certainty.
Okay.
You will have to take decisions and move forward on the basis of some data and a lot of intuition.
Right.
Some logic and a lot of intuition.
Right.
And you would have to be bold about moving forward with those without the fear of failure. And so to do all this, you have to be extremely high on the adaptability scale.
Right.
And probably because you said one thing, I would probably pick this as that one thing, which can make a very significant difference. Here also, when I'm looking at a person to come in my team, I am doing it with the intent that this person is here as part of my team to grow, to contribute, to learn, and to enrich both himself and the organization.
Right.
To do all of that, today I might be hiring a person for a role, but I would expect that person to do many more things.
Okay.
Grow, flourish, do many more things. And therefore, the most important thing, even for a hire, would be adaptability.
Okay.
I am assuming that everybody would meet the basic expectations on skill.
Right.
But it is the ability to adapt. Things could change. A person could be hired for something, but the environment is so volatile, it could change. And therefore, you have to adapt to a new environment. So, whether you're talking of a person who's a CXO, or you're talking of a person who is maybe an individual level contributor, adaptability is probably the most important thing. And the ability to adapt, along with it, the ability to learn and grow, so that that person also can see the fulfillment of her or his potential. That person can also flourish in an environment where things are changing and there's a lot to contribute and to create impact. So I would look for that adaptability.
Great, Deepak. Deepak, as a CEO of a pharma company, what are those challenges you have faced during the COVID-19 crisis?
So COVID-19 was perhaps the most intense experience of my life.
Okay.
And I think it's also true for a lot of other people who were in healthcare, who were in pharma, who were in hospitals, who were in other areas connected to healthcare. It was the most intense because it was a situation nobody was familiar with. It was a situation which was changing and evolving every single day. And I want to share a few examples. So Dr.Reddys was able to launch quite a few medicines which were relevant from a COVID perspective. So antivirals, other medicines which could help to address patients who were in a critical situation. So during that period, especially in 2020 and 2021, during the second wave of COVID in India, when a lot of people were suffering untold misery, I think at that point of time, it was extremely important for all of us in healthcare to do whatever best we could and step up in our own way. For example, as a pharma company, our objective was to make sure that our people are safe, so that they will continue to work and make medicines available and accessible to patients all over the world. and we are a part of the solution for COVID. So we developed a large number of COVID drugs. We partnered with a lot of people. We got a vaccine. All of that essentially driven by the fact that you want to create an impact. You want to be a part of the solution.
Right.
You want to make a difference. And so many of us during that period really stretched into limits which we had not thought were possible.
Okay.
I remember a particular period of time in May 2021 when the second wave of COVID in India was at its peak, and Dr. Reddys was making some of these critical drugs, where we were not only looking at every hour of how the drugs were getting produced, but also how it could reach the patients for whom it was really intended.
Right.
So there were so many people who were calling directly, thousands of people from all over India who were reaching out all over the place. And the goal at that point of time was that how can we address each one of those with the right empathy and with the right intervention, so that from our side we can do the best to address their situation.
Right.
And it was even when we were always counting numbers, it was not as much about numbers as it was about an individual, as it was about a father, a mother, a spouse, a brother, a sister, a son, a daughter. It was about those people. And I'm so proud to say that so many people in Dr. Reddys and so many people in the rest of the healthcare industry actually thought of it at that level. Did not look at these as numbers, did not look at these as cases. They actually thought of them as individuals who meant the world to their families and to the people around them, and did whatever they could from an intervention standpoint. And I think this aspect of healthcare, of pharma, some people probably know about it, a lot of people don't know about it. And while there are multiple challenges that we all face, and there are so many things that we can do better, I think that COVID time just went to show what is possible and what can be done by people going far beyond the limits of what they had imagined. And for that, I feel eternally in gratitude to be a part of a healthcare system, to be a part of this organization wherein I was able to do something that created that impact.
Deepak, thank you so much. I really had such an insightful session with you. It's a pleasure to my team as well. We all been planning for this session for a very long time. It's been incredible. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.